Once again, thank you very much for this opportunity. In 5 minutes, I will present some preliminary data from a study that we just completed. We wanted to investigate the relationship between physiological synchrony and joint action motor parameters and personality traits. So we know that physiological synchrony is the temporal alignment of physiological states between individuals interacting together, and we want to see the impact of how people move together during the interaction and of personality traits, and whether there was also a reciprocal relationship between these two aspects. So we recruited 40 pairs of participants. We asked them to fill many personality questionnaires. And we engaged participants in a joint action task that we have used a lot in our lab. It's a joint grasping task. So I hope you can see the video. Basically, two people need to grasp as synchronously as possible two bottle-shaped objects. And they receive instruction before starting the movements. So from this task, we collected different kinematic variables, starting from grasping asynchrony, so how good they were to touch together, at the difference in start, so how good they were to start moving together, the average movement time, the movement time variability, and the correlation between the two participants' movement time. There were two different conditions. One is the free interaction, in which participants have to do either a complementary movement, so touch in the same place, or touch in different places, or an imitative movement, so touch both in the upper part or in the lower part. And then a leader-follower task, in which the leader receives the instruction to grasp either in the upper part or in the lower part, and the follower has to follow and do the same or the opposite. We recorded the heart rate from both participants, and we measured physiological synchrony using different approaches, but for time limits, I will focus on cross-correlation. So here, physiological synchrony will be the highest cross-correlation coefficient between the two IBI time series observed across lags. So the first thing that we found is that this measure of physiological synchrony was able to discriminate between conditions. So compared to a baseline in which they were doing nothing and they could not see each other, physiological synchrony was higher both in the free task and in the leader-follower task, and that's good. Participants did many blocks of the task, 16 blocks. What we observed across time was that there wasn't an increase or a decrease in physiological synchrony, but every time that there was a change in condition, so at the first block of each new session, a new condition, physiological synchrony seemed to increase. Then we try to see the relationship between physiological synchrony and all the kinematics variables and all the personality traits. So we did a multiple regression with stepwise selection, and we found that the smaller the start difference, so the more they were able to start together at the same time, the higher the physiological synchrony, and also that the higher the empathy, the perspective taking aspect of empathy, the higher the physiological synchrony, which makes sense. But we also found these weird results, so that the more the dyad was depressed, the higher the physiological synchrony. And then we tried to put everything together, and we found that yeah, indeed, physiological synchrony was related to start difference, but also start difference was related to perspective taking. So we had this idea that maybe the relationship between physiological synchrony and personality traits might be related of how people with different personality traits move during the task. So people with higher perspective taking might start more together, and so they might have higher physiological synchrony. So this is really preliminary evidence, but we suggest that there might be a reciprocal relationship between task-related bodily movement features, individual dispositions, and physiological synchrony. And yeah, thank you very much again, and thank you to all my authors. And that's it. I hope I was in time.
You were perfectly on time. We are blown away first by being so punctual. Thank you so much, and also for your amazing talk. I will turn over the mic to Suzanne, because I'm sure you have lots to say about synchrony.
Yes, first I want to say it's a great talk, really great presentation, super clear. I thought it was really, amazing. And because sometimes what I do often is when I have my, especially on the first results, is to give way too much information about the background and how I got where I got. And you did, I think you did a really, really amazing job at really staying to the point of your presentation. So I have questions. Nita and I were just in a 3-day workshop on synchrony, where a lot of stuff emerged, and a lot of questions that some of which are relevant to your study as well. So first of all, I'm really intrigued by the depression findings. And I wanted to hear if you have thoughts on that. And I also, just as a methodological question, wanted to know how you looked at the values of the dyadic depression. Was it an average between the two? Did you look at distance between each member of the dyad? So maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, we start from the last question. So the measure is the average. Which is, of course, it's a measure that is not perfect, because the average might be either 2 people very depressed or 1 person very depressed and the other one not so much. So for now, we started with the average. We wanted also to see whether the difference between the 2 participants' personality traits might have some relationship with physiological synchrony. Also, if you have suggestions about another measure that can capture either both the magnitude and the difference between the two, I would really be happy to hear it. About depression, it's a bit weird, because also depression was directly related to start difference. So the more people were depressed, the more they were synchronous in starting the movement. So we cannot explain this as we did with perspective taking, but we will definitely dig more into the data, and maybe we will find out that depression is linked to another motor feature, which in turn is linked to physiological synchrony.
Did you ask them directly how depressed are, I'm sorry I don't know the questionnaire that you used, but you didn't ask how depressed are you right now, right? You've got
no, it's the Beck depression inventory.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know, I think we definitely need to dig more into the data. And also, for example, physiological synchrony was not related to grasping asynchrony. So we were expecting that the more people were synchronized with the heart, the better they were at grasping together at the same time, but that was not true. So it's possible that, as Ilanit many times said, the synchrony is not that good after all.
So I'm going to hop in, if I may. So one option you could look at from a methodological point of view is something we've done to try and avoid this issue with averaging across pairs, or what I now is groups of 7 or 8, which becomes even more, it muddies the water terribly, is that you can use the score, whatever it happens to be in this particular case, the depression one, as a weighting factor for the individual time course. So rather than just including in your model this sort of average depression score for the pair, before you even get to that point, you weight the particular time course. So the individual data set is then weighted by your depression score,
okay.
And then you look at the synchrony across the 2 time
Okay, thanks. We'll
That might
definitely try.
be an option. And then I misread this graph, but it wasn't. It would only be because I'm somewhat distracted. Is you don't show a difference between the leader follower and the.
Yeah, it was not significant. So with this measure of physiological synchrony, it seems that synchrony is higher in the free task compared to the leader follower one, but the two are not significantly different from each other.
I don't think it's a problem. I think it probably speaks to the point you made earlier, that you don't see physical coupling, you don't see movement synchrony in your particular task, but somehow just working together in some way allows you to couple at a physiological level. But as such, you probably therefore don't find a difference between the two physical coupling conditions, right? They didn't get to that level of difference. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but maybe you can tie those two aspects of the results together, maybe. Yeah. I don't know if anybody else has anything else to say. Susan, did you have anything else? Otherwise, we go ahead.
Oh, should we go? Because I just wanted to know if they have, if in the task, if the feedback they receive is only their own estimate of how synchronous they were visually. So there was no, like your measure afterwards, they didn't get any kind of feedback on that, right?
Yeah, in this case, yes. So they don't get visual feedback. So the only feedback is, yeah, exactly their guess of how good they were. But we also have had some questionnaires at the end of each block, in which we asked how much you think you were good, how much you enjoyed the interaction, how much you felt on the same wavelength. But we haven't finished analyze them.
Yeah, because that was going to be my follow-up question, if you have an introspection measure.
Yes.
And maybe because there's actually some research, I don't know the literature very well, but I know of some research suggesting you can do introspection with heart rate as well, right? So it could be very interesting to see the relationship between how, if you're trying to look at the connection between physiological synchrony and behavior, it could be a really interesting space of hypotheses to see how good people are at estimating their own physiology,
yes,
and estimating their behavior in terms of synchrony. So,
yeah, we asked how much they felt on the same wavelength, but obviously that can mean everything. So it wasn't so specific, but yeah, for next time, definitely. Thanks.
Before moving on to our second flash talk, Sarah, do you have any questions for us?
Not really, not at the moment.
No, that's fine. We're here for you if you need us.
But I will stay on the YouTube and maybe I will ask later. Thank you so much again.
No, thank you, Sarah. It was fun.